Hello there. I am both an atheist and a folklorist. Now that may seem as some sort of contradiction to many of you, but please do bear with me. Please hear me out. I'm absolutely fascinated by folklore, tales, myths, stories handed down from generation to generation and the like. When I study these, there are times that I may come across a same or similar story occurring in different cultures and sometimes from different countries. When I encounter such stories, it seems only logical and reasonable to me to assume that they must have at some point had some basis in reality. Somewhere in history, mankind must have witnessed some event which gave rise to the tales and which were carried down, possibly largely if not wholly in oral tradition, and thereby became lost in the retelling. I like to think that I address these things with the logic of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, as he wrote in Sherlock Holmes and the Sign of 4. First, eliminate the impossible. Whatever is left, however improbable, must be the truth. And it is with that in mind that I would like to address the flood myths. Now, all too often, I encounter Christians and young earth creationists who point to the fact that many ancient cultures have flood myths within their historical narrative and or their religious belief systems, and they attempt to use that as evidence to support the biblical account of the flood and the story of Noah's Ark. I was just recently watching a video on YouTube in which a well-known evangelist and young earth creationist Eric Hovind did exactly that. Hovind stated that there was something like 30 cultures had flood myths. In that, Mr. Hovind is actually very, very incorrect, and it may astound many of you to discover that the vast majority of ancient cultures from all over the world and in all continents had flood myths, which found their way into their historical narrative and or the religious belief system. Does this prove the biblical account of the flood and Noah's Ark? Not for one moment. Now, according to the Bible, God grew angry with mankind because he had become so wicked and decided to destroy the earth. First, saving Noah and his family, instructing Noah to build a huge vessel, the ark, and to take all kinds of animal onto it in 2s and in 7s. The animals did not go in 2 by 2. Check your Bible. Clean animals went in 7s. And this flood was so devastating that it pushed up mountains and carved valleys and changed the entire topography of the earth. Biblical scholars tell us that this happened 4,400 years ago. There are several problems with this narrative. Firstly, there is absolutely no evidence of widespread flooding either in the Middle East or anywhere else on the face of the earth 4,400 years ago. Then we have to consider the logistics of Noah saving all the animals. There is not a ship going on the oceans nowadays, no matter how big, could fit all of the 1.5 million species of animal on the face of the earth. And I am only talking about the animals which are extant on the face of the earth today. Never mind all those that are extinct. young earth creationists will have you believe that Noah took the dinosaurs, the carnivorous ones, as well as herbivores, onto the ark. Eric Hovind tries to say that he took young dinosaurs on. Well, I'm sorry, but even the larger young dinosaurs were pretty big. When you think of it, finding room, tending to, feeding, and dealing with the waste of all these creatures would be a logistical impossibility. It just could not happen. Therefore, we can quite easily dismiss the biblical account of the flood and of Noah's ark. And yet we're still left with the problem, because we have all these flood myths, all these accounts from all over the earth. As I said, there's not one continent was untouched with flood myths. They occur in all cultures. So when we find that, it's only logical and reasonable to assume that mankind must have been witness to some sort of devastating flood, some event that flooded the earth, and which was so devastating that it changed the geography of the earth itself. It may astound you to discover that I believe that there was such an event which our early ancestors witnessed. This is my theory. Our species, mankind, Homo sapiens, thinking man, has been on the face of this planet for 200,000 years. Now, our early ancestors were no different from us in the intelligence stakes. They had the same capacity for intelligence that we had. They merely lacked the resources to impart and to use that intelligence to its optimum as we have nowadays. And so, whenever they encountered something, they would record it, albeit for most of that history in the oral tradition. It'd be handed down by word of mouth. Whenever that happens, things get lost in the retelling. It's like Chinese whispers. So we're looking for the story that all mankind saw. Basically, we're looking for a common ancestor, only this time to a folk tale. 100,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago, the last glaciation occurred on the face of the earth, with the glacial maximum occurring some 18,000 years ago before the ice started to recede again to the point of the polar ice caps which we have today. We are still in the last glaciation. That's why we have polar ice caps. And of course, what happened in the last glaciation? Glaciers carved out valleys, ripped through earth and stone, and leaving vast swathes behind them as the ice melted. And as the ice melted, the seas and rivers rose. Where there had been land bridges previously, there were land bridges no more. What is now Russia became cut off with what is now the Americas. Britain became cut off from mainland Europe. And so there we have the very topography of the earth being changed and widespread flooding. It is my belief that mankind witnessed this. They handed it down in oral tradition from generation to generation. It got lost in the retelling. The floods did indeed occur, not 4,400 years ago, but 100,000 to 10,000 years ago. I'm not saying that, of course, this is how it happened. It is my theory, but it seems a lot more likely than the biblical account of the flood or any other religious account for that matter. And one more word to Christians, Muslims, Jews, or any other culture whose religious belief has a flood myth. If you point to the vast majority of flood myths throughout the ancient cultures, then you cannot say that that supports your one theory, because you do not have the proof of that. For all you know, any of the other ones could be the correct one. I'd like to hear people's comeback on this. As I say, it is only a theory, but please do either make a video response or leave your comments below in what you think. Peace.